Hey fishing friends, welcome to Load the Boat with Zach. In today's video, I'm going to use real map examples and show you where I look for pre-spawn bass and give you a basic rundown of my favorite lures to use when searching for them. Now, in the early pre-spawn, what I'm going to look for is some grass in front of creeks, close to the main river channel or creek channel where fish maybe have just moved up from deeper water into that grass. And also, I'm going to look for some steeper rocky banks leading into creeks. That's one of the first places that I find fish start showing up in numbers, and one of the first places that they'll stage before the spawn. If you drive down the river in February, you'll see a bunch of guys, up on these main river bars, slinging rattle traps around, and it's something that's a little bit more time consuming. You have to go and you spend a lot of time on the trolling motor covering water that way. But when you find them, you can catch a bunch of fish, and it's something that forward facing is not as big of a deal with that, because you're fishing in that grass. So it's something that a traditional angler can do and still get a really big limit doing it. All right, as we get into the full pre-spawn mode, then what I'm going to look for is generally flatter areas that are going to warm up quicker. Now, areas that warm up quicker are going to be shallower. You're going to want to look for shallower creeks or shallower pockets in general, something that doesn't necessarily have a lot of water flow. You want something that's more of a stagnant kind of area. These places that are shallow and flat, especially on the northern in northern pockets, basically northwestern kind of banks, are going to get that sun first, get it the most throughout the day, and those are gonna warm up quicker. And basically, the science behind the searching for these flatter banks is that's gonna have more surface area, and the steep drops are going to have shadows in them throughout the day, depending on the angle of the sun. The flatter areas are going to get more of that sunlight, and it's gonna warm up quicker. Because until these water temperatures start getting up into the at least in Guntersville in the 60s, sometimes the fish can really be favoring that warmth. I've caught a lot of fish lately that still have mud on their bellies when I warm up. The bigger females, they're just sitting down on the bottom, collecting that warmth from the sunlight. So I'm gonna look for flatter points. Points are a huge deal in the pre-spawn, but I don't want something that's really a really steep point. I want a more flatter, rounded point. And if you can find a point that like bisects a creek, that's a great high percentage area. But a good way to find fish in the pre-spawn is just point hopping. Find you some flat points and see how far back in the creeks they are. Because if you find some fish that are halfway back in the creeks, you can go and repeat that pattern. A lot of times you can go to the next pocket, next creek, and you can find them halfway back, as long as it's similar. It's not much deeper or much more shallow. And in these flatter areas, you're going to want to look for harder bottom. I mentioned that before, that harder cover is going to warm up quicker. But even if you don't have something hard necessarily, a darker bottom, that darker color is going to retain that heat a little bit better. It's going to warm up more. It's why you don't go out in the summertime wearing black clothes, because it gets you hot, right? In the pre-spawn time, when these fish are searching for warmth, just a darker bottom can be key as well, if you don't necessarily have a lot of hard cover in the area. And also in these flatter areas, looking for something like like pad stems or something. If you know there's those pads in the area, either from history or from using Google Earth. Something just as simple as some pad stems on the bottom can be key to holding these fish. Another good place if you're you have a flat bank, looking where a ditch goes into a flat is really good, because although you may have a lot of fish on a flat harder bottom bank warming up, they can be kind of scattered about, or it can be kind of hard if you have a massive area to really pinpoint where those fish are. But if you have a area that ditches into it, that can be a great place. Those fish can congregate, near the edge of that ditch, or they'll follow it in and maybe sitting near the back of the ditch, or the mouth, depending on the time of the day and what the water is doing. Finding a flat that has a ditch going into it can be a great place to locate a really good concentration of fish, because these bass will go and use those ditches as highways. They're going to follow that depth in. Same with like creek channels. If you have a place on a flat that's got a creek channel nearby, a spawning area that's got a creek channel not too far away can be a great spot to find a lot of fish that have just moved up. Another good thing this time of year to try to find are road beds. Now we have a couple of famous road beds here on Guntersville that kind of go all the way across the lake. Finding some road beds can be a great place to find some fish, because again, that's that harder bottom, the rock that's going to warm up quicker. And as these fish are cruising into the creek, they hit that road bed, they'll follow that road bed in. So fishing the road bed and where it goes and connects to the bank, that can be a great place to find some fish, really all the way up through the post spawn. I do really good on road beds all the way up until the fish go and start moving off into the ledges. So road beds, another great place to find some fish stacked up. And if you don't have road beds in your lake that go all the way across the river, if you look on Navionics, sometimes they'll show older road beds that run along the bank, and those are great areas as well. Even if it doesn't go all the way across the lake, if you see on Navionics old road bed that runs just along the bank, that's going to tell you usually that's going to be harder bottom in that area, and that's something that you'll find the fish move up on. I'm going to look for those road beds that are on northern facing banks, those west side, so it can get that most sun, and you can find a lot of fish staging up in the pre-spawn there, and they'll even spawn higher up on those banks a little bit later in the year. But those harder bottoms, those fish will warm up there, and also I told you need to look for irregularities in the grass. A lot of times that harder bottom will have more of that patchier grass that you're looking for. It'll have those irregularities that the fish will use to feed up on. Humps can be a great place to locate some fish, especially if you can find some isolated. Again, you're going to want to look for something that's a little bit flatter. I don't want a hump that's got real steep sides to it. I want it to be, or if it has steeper sides, I want it to be, have a good flat area on top. I don't want it to be like a hill. I want it to be more plateaued, because that flat area, that's going to warm up quicker. That's going to be a place where the fish can get up, sit, get some sun. And especially if you can find some that have some maybe isolated clumps of grass on them. Same with the flatter areas, any area that we're looking at here. If you can find some isolated taller clumps of grass, or if everything's grassed up, finding some areas with holes in it, you're still looking, just like any time of the year, you're looking for some irregularities that are involved as well. But back to the humps. On these humps, another good thing to find is some stumps. Some of the biggest fish that you're gonna catch are gonna go and be staging up on these stumps. That's something that the root system, the stump itself, that's gonna be something that they can ambush against. They can feed with, but they can also warm against. They can go and they can tuck right up against it and warm up. So finding some of these isolated stumps, or finding humps that have some stumps along the side of them, can be a great place to catch some fish, or stumps along the creek channel. Great place for some of these fish to hold up on, and it can surprise you how many fish will hold on a stump if it's isolated, if there's nothing else. uh, I had one year, I had a ridiculous number. I probably caught 20, 30 fish off of one little stump these fish were grouped up on. So if you can find a stump in the right depth of water, uh, you can really catch some big fish and some numbers off of them, especially if that's the only cover in the area. Now, I cannot forget bridges in the pre-spawn. I love fishing bridges any time of the year. If you put me near a bridge, I will probably catch a fish. And this pre-spawn time is no exception. These bridges create pinch points here. If you can find some pinch points, even without a bridge, any kind of narrowing in the creek, that'll be a good place for the fish to stage in. If you have a major bridge, that fish have to go through to get to the spawning area, you'll find some fish relating either to the bridge pylons themselves. A lot of those bass will warm up on the creek pylons, and they'll eat the crappie and the shad and things that are sitting on the bridge pylons. Uh, they'll take advantage of that current that's going through the bridges. And also the riprap. Riprap can be huge this time of year, especially on Gunnersville. There's been some big sacks, where you could catch them from the bank. Fish will go that rock. I told you you're looking for hard cover. The riprap is a great place for those fish to stage up on, and they'll follow that riprap to the bank as they're moving back into these creeks. That riprap is a good ambush point, and again, a place where they can tuck up against those rocks and warm up. So definitely don't ignore riprap and the bridges. Only problem with bridges, especially this time of the year when you have a lot of traffic on Gunnersville, is it can be a little bit hazardous. You can't hardly fish a bridge without wearing a helmet, because there'll be so many A-rigs being slung around them. But there's a lot of people fishing around those bridges for a reason. There can be lots of fish there. If you show up to a bridge, there's not a whole lot of people, or if you live on a lake that doesn't have as much fishing pressure, definitely do not ignore bridges. And I'm going to start off on the big major bridges near the mouths of the creeks, something like the Browns Creek Bridge earlier in the pre-spawn, and then just kind of work my way back as the water temperature warms. Just like you would try to find the fish, not fishing bridges. Start off near the mouth, and as the water temperature warms up, moving the bridges that are further back, even going and targeting the little tiles in the backs of the creeks as we get later into the pre-spawn, and fishing the bridges and themselves and the riprap. Now, if you live on a lake that's not like Gunnersville, you don't have a lot of grass and stumps and things like that. These fish will, docks are another thing that can be good in the pre-spawn. Really, any time of the year you can find fish on docks. But finding fish, if you're finding them halfway back in the creek, fishing docks that are halfway back in the creek, getting them at the right depth level, those fish will go typically in the pre-spawn. I'm fishing the front part of the docks, but as we get closer to the spawn, I'm going to go and work my ways to the walk down the walkways. But in the pre-spawn, typically you want to fish docks that are sticking a little bit further out, because sometimes we got 2 or 3 winters here in Alabama. The water temperature will be go up to 55, back down to 45. We have a lot of fluctuations, so these fish are going to want to be able to slide up and down a little bit. You want something that's got some that's on or near some depth to it typically. Another great place that you can target in the pre-spawn, one of my favorite places to fish is transition banks. a transition bank, that's something then where you have something steeper that transitions into something flatter, hence the name transition bank. And what that'll do, that gives the fish something steeper. They have that depth to fall back to if the water levels drop or if it gets really cold. But on these sunny days and these warming trends, they can move up onto the flatter banks, and they can warm up better. And fishing some transition banks to start your day is great because it'll tell you what you need to be doing the rest of the day. If the fish are all on that steep side, you want to fish the breaks, fish some of that steeper uh, structure still. But if they're up on the flats, you know that you need to stay shallow the rest of the day. It can really help you get keyed in on that bite. So starting off in some transition areas can definitely get you a better idea of what the fish are doing and what you need to do that day if you haven't been on the water recently or if you're fishing a new lake. Now, if you're fishing somewhere that's got a lot of rock, more like a highland reservoir type thing, in those kind of areas, one of my favorite things to target is some bluffs in the pre-spawn. But I don't want something that's just straight, vertical and goes straight down into 100 foot of water. What I'm wanting is some bluffs that have some shelves to them. Because just like like somewhere like Gunnersville, I'm looking for a flatter bank. Those shelves are going to create a flatter area where these fish can sit and warm up on. And again, I'm looking on those northern facing banks. So if you can find some bluffs that have some shelves, that's a great place to target some fish. And I'm fishing some rock transitions. I like somewhere that's going to uh, in the wintertime. I think the bigger rocks better, but I'm looking more towards like that pea gravel, that smaller rock later in the year as we get closer to the spawn. But going and fishing some rock transitions will tell you what they're liking. If you find that they're still holding on the big rock, that can help you. Just like fishing transition areas on a grass lake, fishing some rock transitions can kind of tell you what kind of cover to target the rest of the day. And those like 45-degree banks that whatever the flattest bank that you can get in your body of water, that's gonna warm up quicker and gonna be able to take more advantage of the sun. So that's a great place to target this time of the year. All right, those are the areas that I like to fish most of the time. Now I'll give you two exceptions that I'll do that I'll make. One, if you really like live scoping, if you're a big live scope fisherman, or if you want to try to learn that, that's when it's okay not to look for those real flat areas. Instead, you're going to look for a little bit narrower ditches and smaller, steeper pockets. Because if the fish don't have that flatter bank to sit on the bottom and warm up, what they'll do then is get where that as deep as they can and still have that good light penetration, and you'll find them on those steeper banks kind of floated up, warming from the sun then, so they're a little bit easier to spot. So if you like throwing the jig head minnow, that's what you're looking for there. And also if you have a lot of rain, like we do in the springtime here in Alabama, if you have a warm rain that has the water temperature go up with it, and you have the water level rise, that's when I will just head straight to the backs of the pocket, straight to these water inflow areas, and you can have some of the best fishing of your life. When you have a good warm spring rain, those fish will move quickly to these areas that the water is flowing in at, that has warmed up that new area. You can get on a really strong shallow bite and load the boat in a hurry. So that's definitely an exception. I will go, even if I was catching them near the mouth of a creek or the front of the creek to start with, if we have had a really good warm water influx, that is a time where I will just go and skip the rest of the creek and head straight to the back and fish areas that have a good water inflow. So you can just find them stacked up there in that warmth and taking advantage of that current coming in. All right, we'll jump to lures here. I was gonna keep it simple here and have the must-haves in your boat. You can do a lot of different stuff in the pre-spawn. These are the lures that I have the most confidence in. Number one, earlier in the year, rattle trap. That'll get them fish. That'll get those fish that don't even want to eat biting. It's a reaction bait. Yo-yoing it, ripping it out of the grass could be a great way to catch some fish. Sometimes these fish are belly in the mud, so having that bait get down there in their face, something bright, something loud like a red rattle trap can really get them triggered. Now I really prefer a one knocker. That's just personal preference. You can experiment with sound. Sometimes one will outperform the other, but confidence wise, one knocker rattle trap is what I really like, and I like to throw it on braid, 30-pound braid for ripping it out of the grass. If you don't have a lot of grass, you can go with a fluorocarbon, but I get a better feel of what's down there and can rip it out of the grass better and have more clean casts with the braid. Another thing I'll do, I'm a big fan of round bend hooks, slick coating. I talk about that a lot. Round bend slick coating, but with my rattle traps, I like that EWG style hook that pinned in, because especially you doing a lot of yo-yoing, the fish tend to eat the rattle trap a lot better. But when you have a 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce bait, these fish, for some reason, they can sling the rattle trap easier. Having that EWG, that's going to go and keep them pinned better. So the rattle trap's one of the few baits I will go and change out to EWG style hooks. Another early bait I like is the Alabama rig. I prefer the like Picasso Bait Ball Pulse Junior. I'm experimenting with some of the fluorocarbon rigs, but this rig is light wire. You'll get a lot more motion out of your baits with it. And I like to use 3-inch swim baits. And I use 16th ounce heads or 1/8 ounce heads. I like to go as light as possible. One, because it's easier. I'm a broken body to sling a lighter rig. And two, you're going to have less issues with the baits hooking and tangling each other with a lighter weight. Heavier weights, you're going to get more movement out of the arms and they're more likely to tangle. The lighter weight's going to give you more control. If you're fishing blind, when you hit the grass, you can rip it out before all 5 of your baits are caught in there, and you have no chance of recovering that cast. And if you have live scope and you're watching it, it gives you more control. It's not just going in and falling to the bottom right away. You have a lot more control with a lighter rig. So that's what I like to do with my rig there. And pay attention to how the fish are reacting if you can to your colors. If you're getting followers, change in your color can be big this time of the year. If we get dirty water, going all white can be big. I just showed you a red rattle trap, but white can, red and white both can play big roles in this pre-spawn time period. Keeping it reaction, jerk bait. I love a jerk bait. I mention it in just about every video. I love the 110 Junior Series is my favorite just because I like catching lots of fish, and I still catch some big ones on this as well. But I love having a jerk bait. Early in the pre-spawn, I'm using the +1 Junior. But as the water temperature starts warming up, I'm going to throw this shallow diver more, because these fish I'm going to be fishing shallower, and even in the deeper, little bit deeper water, the fish are going to be suspended up in the water column more. They're going to want to be getting that sun and staying above. You want to stay above them with the jerk bait, Alabama rig. It's a visual bait. These fish are feeding up on these lures, so having a shallow diver, even if you're fishing a little bit deeper water, can get you some more fish. So definitely keep a jerk bait on board, and this time of the year I switched to that shallow diver. And I also like a flat-sided crankbait. It goes hand in hand with that rattle trap. But I really like this Berkley Fritz side in the pre-spawn period. Sometimes if you have 2 people in the boat, having one throwing a rattle trap, one throwing a flat-sided crankbait can help you see what they're keying in on. If the fish are seeing a lot of rattle traps, sometimes going and throwing a flat-sided bait like a that's got a bill on it can sometimes get you a couple of extra fish. And sometimes, if you're fishing around a lot of rock, bouncing these off the rock can be a great way to trigger a reaction bite. But these Berkley Fritz sides here put a lot of fish in the boat, and you can even use the little clicking model here if you have some dirty water. But the plain Fritz side in the whites and the reds are one of my favorite baits to throw this time of the year. And the only non-reaction bait that I think you have to have in your boat in the pre-spawn is some kind of jig. Now, this is just more of a finesse jig here because I like catching numbers of fish, but whatever jig you feel confident in. A regular jig and a bladed jig, of course. You can't fish any time of the year in Guntersville without a chatterbait, but a jig is a great way to get some of the biggest fish of the year. If you find those stumps that I talked about, some isolated stumps, tossing a jig on the stumps, dragging it down some of the riprap, a jig can, usually produces one of the biggest fish caught on Guntersville every year. And this pre-spawn time period is a great time to throw one. As these water temperatures warm up, the fish are going to be feeding a lot more on crawfish. You'll start catching, if you notice they got catching fish, I say they got their lipstick on, their lips are red when you're catching them. That means they're rooting around on the bottom fishing for crawfish. So that's why that rattle trap and the jig really start to shine as these crawfish start getting active, waking up. So put you a jig on, and you can catch one of the some of the biggest fish in your lake, especially if they're not going in and hitting the reaction baits. Dragging a jig around could be a great way to keep fish coming in your boat and really catch a big one. You can definitely throw some more baits that I haven't mentioned. Spinner baits can be great situationally. A plain swim bait instead of the Alabama rig can sometimes outperform. But I feel all of the time you have to have these baits that I mentioned in your boat when you're fishing the areas that I talked about. Use these lures, fish these areas, and you too can load the boat.